So it's been a while since I've had this conversation, but the phrase that resonated was this one single sentence, this phrase saved my marriage. And I'm going to get to that in a minute of what it is. But first, I want to explore how interesting it is in communication because we don't really learn this. So we tend to communicate on how we are raised, what we witnessed and saw in our own upbringing. So if your parents were fighters, you tend to fight. If your parents were stuffers, you tend to stuff. And a lot of the times it's never really been questioned or challenged. We just kind of accepted it. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Actually, in fact, I'll even be as bold to say, hey, if it's working for you, then continue. There's no reason to change things that are working. But if it's not, you may want to revisit what exactly is going on. And so I want to tell you a story about, I think it's been about 2 years now, but I just ran across this video because she was kind enough to come back and do a video case study for us of how her experience was and with her loved one and what that looked like. And I still remember a few nights on the phone with her in the very beginning, just at the start of reaching out. And she was saying, no, physically, he's never done anything. It's just been all emotional. And he'd never go there. But she wasn't really clear on how to have a conversation, how to set boundaries of what she was and wasn't really willing to tolerate. And so I remember after a few days, kind of gave some advice and talking, and she kind of heard it. But I remember the day that she called and said, I never thought it would get to this, but he was really angry and he pushed me and I fell across the kitchen floor and got hurt. And so that was when she knew it was time to begin to really have the conversation of this will change. So that night she stayed, I think it was at a neighbor's house. But the next day, once he wasn't under the influence anymore, she had a conversation, and she said she'd had conversations like this before, but before we spoke, it was not intentionally, but just came from this place of pain. And she said she had a lot of pain and pent up anger and aggression towards him, understandably, judgment, all sorts of things, confusion. And so a lot of the times when we're communicating with a loved one, we're not aware of what we're bringing into it. So if we are looking to communicate just physically or from mind to mind, if you will, there's so many different barriers. So I remember as we were speaking and talking about, well, what is it that you're wanting? We were able to get to a place where she was able to communicate from her heart. It took a little bit of work, but as she stepped out and free temporarily, and again, not condoning what had happened, but away from judgment, of blame, of the anger, of the resentment, of all the stuff coming up, and just communicating heart to heart, that is where it changed, and she was able to reach him at a place. And when she came to him and said, here's what's been happening. Here's what happened last night. I don't even know if you remember. But it was this place of love and empathy. So she laid her weapons down in order to communicate. And what's interesting is, and I've found this over the decades, is whoever is more congruent with their certainty and belief tends to dominate the conversation within that alignment. So what I mean by that is, if a person is angry and coming at, just spewing venom, and the other person is kind of uncertain, there will be that fight. But when I can stand rooted in my peacefulness and just speaking truth from a place of love, still with boundaries, not always, but most often that person's able to hear me. And what was amazing is she was able to reach him in a way where he finally broke down. And he was able to say that he did not want to live that way. And so he was able to get the help. But the phrase that we went over, and I don't know what it is about this phrase. I think what it is it provides safety, and it allows a person to save face, because, well, let's face it, when a person's doing horrific things, it's very difficult to own it, and then B, to actually accept what happened and begin to make the amends process. But so the phrase that happened is when she sat down And we had rehearsed this a few times because she said anytime I bring it up, he's wonderful at manipulating it and flipping it and putting it all back on me, where I begin to think I'm the issue, and I just get so frustrated and angry and pissed off, and I'm not the issue. I'm not the one that is damaging this relationship. And so the phrase that we went over is when she would sit down and actually begin to talk with him, again, coming from the heart, not from the place of judgment and the mind. When we're in our head, it is so difficult because emotion is evolved, judgment, evaluations, the shoulds, what you should and shouldn't do, overtakes everything, as opposed to just opening the heart and the soul and saying, here's where I am, here's where I'm hurting, here's what I'm wanting, and here's what I'm no longer going to tolerate. And I want to open the conversation with you to see, where are you? Where are you hurting? What is it that you're wanting? And what is it you're not willing to tolerate? And if we can explore this and actually have an open conversation, then we might be able to heal through this. And so she had the conversation, and he ended up going to treatment and got help. And I just heard from her. I actually bumped into her at Fashion Island it was around Easter time, so several months ago, and he had just taken 2 years, and she said their relationship is the best it's ever been. The trust is back. He has a wonderful job. They love each other, just really cool things. But the whole phrase, so the phrase that saved this was, it's this, and hopefully it will help you like it did with me and with her and with a lot of other people. When we're willing to sit down and share the information, and as soon as the person's feeling attacked or starts coming back, is to go ahead and take a step back and to ask genuinely and authentically, what is a way that I can share this information with you? Or what is a way that I can share how I'm feeling? And you not take it as an attack, or you not get angry and feel like I'm blaming you. So basically it's when I'm sharing this information with you, how can I share this information with you? And you not take it as an attack or attack me back. And for some reason, this breaks the cycle that we get into. Because when we fight, have you noticed we revert right back to the cycle that we've had almost our entire lives? If I'm a fighter, I'm going to fight. If I'm a fleer, I'm going to flee. Avoiders avoid. It's just, it's innate and it's comfortable. So the first thing is breaking this cycle. And when we begin to do that, that is when we can actually begin to make the progress. Now, here's another key aspect. Most people think that it takes 2 to heal. I thought that for a long time, and it led me to come from this place of condemning my loved one and saying, well, I'm doing all this and you're not, it's your fault. But what I learned is it actually only takes 1. Because as we grow and we get healthier in how to set boundaries, how to have healthy communication, and how not to allow people to treat us a certain way, and not this, you can't treat me that way, but when they do, to have boundaries and say, look, I love you. I care about you. And when you choose to talk to me this way or do this, it breaks that trust. It breaks that bond of love temporarily. And my reaction is to pull away. And I don't want to do that. So are you willing to respect this boundary of not speaking me to this way or whatever it is? And then they have a choice to either say yes or no to keep that commitment or not. Now, that's not where a boundary ends. That's just where it starts. Where the true work begins to take place and begins to flourish is, what is a boundary for? It is to test. Think about it. Every boundary in life is tested. When you're driving down the street, that boundary is to keep you in. You come up. Nowadays, the car rattles when you test that boundary. Oh, sorry, I need to come back in. Boundaries are meant to be tested. Once we recognize that, now I no longer get angry when a person is testing that. I just say, oh, this is the unbreakable boundary. I see you tried to test it. Here is how I am choosing to respond. So with the lady who set that boundary with her loved one, it was, I'm going to stay at my neighbor's house or a friend's house, whatever it is, when this happens. And then we can give it a day or two and we can try again. And if it repeats, that's where you start having that conversation about what does it look like to end this relationship that is not growing or going where we are wanting. But it all starts with the conversation. So many times we want to either avoid conflict or we go into conflict with weapons. And those are 2 equally unhealthy no-nos. We don't want to avoid conflict. In fact, we want to address conflict, but we don't want to bring weapons. We want to lay our weapons down and to be fully present and to be clear to have that engagement. So with that phrase, try it next time you're having a conversation. It works wonders. Now, a lot of times in the beginning, person will try it one time and then a little variable pops up. Oh, it doesn't work. No, anytime we try something new, it's weird, it's awkward. You gotta get used to it. So practice it. You can practice it in your friendships. You can practice it in all certain places, but that is one phrase that I have seen work so well to help disarm other people when they begin the manipulation or the blame. And if they continue to, that's where you just go ahead and disconnect and retry again later.